Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
At the end of a super tiring, super exhausting Friday, if I look so happy and so enthused talking about this week's national interest, that is because the political animal in me or political analyst in me is noticing for the first time in decades a big shift in Indian politics. And this shift is ideological, not in terms of ideologies, who has what ideology, but in terms of which ideologies will divide Indian politics, because politics in a democracy is done across a dividing line. Usually, or more often than not, it is ideological, and it's healthy if it's ideological. So for the past many decades, Indian politics has been caught in a rut, and that rut is that everybody is socialist on the economy. The fight then is over identity. It can be religion, it can be caste, it can be ethnicity, it can be region. Now, with this budget session of Parliament, we can say with a fair bit of confidence that a new ideological battle line is being drawn in Indian politics, and that is on the economic plane. So, India's political economy now is being redefined. Now, the reason we are saying that is that in this session, we have seen from Prime Minister Modi a completely unabashed and unqualified case for the private sector in India. In fact, also very sharp criticism of the public sector, which was implied in his statement on Babus, as he put it, or IAS officers, as he specified. Similarly, in this session, we've also had Rahul Gandhi from the Congress party rise up and make a very strong case for socialist politics, harking back to his grandmother's times. That means change. Now, why is change good? In warfare as in politics, mobility is a good thing. If you look at the history of military warfare, then you have two kinds broadly. One is static, that is when you sit in your trenches and keep firing at each other just like that without making any advances or retreat. And the second is the warfare of mobility and maneuver. The two key examples are First World War and Second World War. We know which one was inconclusive and which was conclusive. So it is what is mobile and what involves maneuver, that is conclusive. So far we were all sitting in the socialist trench. Now we are coming out of the trenches. So on the one side you have private sector supporters or free economy supporters. On the other side, you have the socialists. That makes for a much more interesting politics going ahead. Now look at the history of India's political economy. In fact, right since 1947, Indian politics has been by and large socialist. And the tussle has been over who can be more socialist than the other. So starting 1947, Nehru started the process of quite serendipitously getting rid of the right in the Congress party, or the economic right in the Congress party. They went here and there, some landed up in a party called Swatantra Party. After Nehru, in 1969, Mrs. Gandhi gave it a much more decisive and sharper turn with bank nationalization, etc., and also carrying out a big purge of anybody who was seen to be even an inch to the right of center from the Congress party. So she became purely a socialist party, and her opposition also was all socialist. There were many kinds of socialists, there were Lohiites, and there was also the communists. In fact, she was so sharp and the lore of her kind of socialism was so strong, and India's communists were so divided in terms of their attachment to Moscow and Beijing that one lot actually defected and began to support Mrs. Gandhi because she was socialist, also because she was pro-Soviet. That was the CPI. And that went to the extent that CPI actually supported Mrs. Gandhi even during the emergency. So everybody became socialist, everybody became left. I have written many times that is the socialist toxification that India is dealing with. Because any time you come up with any other argument, you are hit by the weapon of mass destruction, which is, but what about the poor? Then you shut up, because that is such a deterrent that you can't fight. So that has endured to the extent that even the Jan Sangh, and later particularly when it became BJP, that also became a socialist party of sorts. So for 5 decades, everybody fired across the socialist trenches on the same side at each other. So India's economic debate wasn't going anywhere. Everybody talked of reform, but they qualified reform. So somebody said reform had to be done because it was a compulsion. That was 1991. It was not an instinctive reform at that point. Somebody said reform with a human touch. Somebody said inclusive reform, 2004 UP as they came in. Somebody said reform with socialist flavor. Mostly it was reform by stealth. What has now happened is this is completely changed. So people said one thing, they did something else. Or as late Sitaram Kesri had once said to me in a published interview, he had said he had just led an Indian parliamentary delegation to China and he had come back, and this is something that's imprinted on my memory. And I asked him, Chacha, we used to call him Chacha, Chacha, what is China like? And he, a lifelong socialist, said कि ये चीन के लोग जो हैं कम्युनिस्ट, ये डीटीसी के दिल्ली में दिल्ली ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉर्पोरेशन बस ड्राइवर्स की तरह हैं. So we asked him why. He said because they signal left and turn right. So a lot of Indian politicians have been doing it, but again they did not turn right to the extent that even the Chinese did. In fact, nowhere close to that. So Indian politics has been driving in the middle of the road, a little bit this side, little bit that side, straddling multiple lanes at the same side, or what we may describe as driving with Indian characteristics. So that has now changed. All that has changed now. There is a clear division because one side has declared itself to be an unhesitating backer of private enterprise and the other a socialist. Now don't be confused by whataboutery. Don't tell me where has Modi come from, where has Rahul come from. See, Congress also carried out some reform. See Modi in the past 6 years, what has he done? In fact, he has been a pakka socialist. If anything, he has put the clock back even on 1991. It's true, by the way. But let's not look at whataboutery now. Let's pick up the thread today from the parliament debate because we are looking ahead now. And I think the change that we have seen is quite substantive and it's going to endure. Now, let's look at some indications in the budget session. First of all, this budget talked about privatization, not disinvestment or not some other euphemism. So far, no government had talked about privatization. In fact, I had said on the budget day that it's the first time a government in India is saying unhesitatingly privatization, not hiding behind some other subterfuge. Now, it's true that on the next day I got a message from Yashwant Sinha, our former finance minister, who reminded me that in his budget speech in 2001, he had mentioned the word privatization. So I acknowledge that and stand corrected. But the fact is, it was just a mention then. It was never a policy. Even the minister, Arun Shourie, was disinvestment minister. This is the first time that privatization has been put forward as a policy. That is one thing. The second thing is look at Narendra Modi's speech. His speech in Rajya Sabha in reply to the motion of thanks to the president. Now he says in that one, first of all, it's the first time I have seen an Indian Prime Minister or any Indian senior leader make such a strong case for the private sector. He said, don't diss the private sector. Don't diss the private entrepreneur. Private entrepreneurs create wealth. Unless you have wealth creators, what will you distribute? You need wealth creators. He goes to the extent of saying that today, if all of the world is gratefully buying Indian vaccines, it's only because of the private sector. You haven't heard that from an Indian Prime Minister before. And second, just as you've seen defense of India's private sector, you've also seen a criticism of India's public sector undertakings. Not in that many words, but when he says that why do we have this belief that IAS officers can run everything, including all businesses, fertilizer plants to banks to everything. Now this is, he used the word Babu for them also. That has somehow got caught in the debate. But the substantive point he made was that private sector people, entrepreneurs who invest, who create wealth, are also Indians as much as civil servants are, and they are deserving of respect. Now, these are very new things. We haven't heard these before. And then look at some of the others. Now, there were many speeches, but one that caught my eye was Tejasvi Surya, the young MP from the BJP from Bengaluru. Now, he is not somebody who would say this unless it had been cleared at higher levels by his party. So, he in his speech brings back late Nani Palkiwala, and he quotes from one of Nani Palkiwala's famous speeches. In fact, a lot of people used to look forward to his speech after the year's budget. He was very pro-free markets. He was among our strongest free market intellectuals, supporters, at least for my generation. So in his speech, he had said that why is India poor? And that's what Tejasvi Surya quotes. He says, India is not poor because of chance, but by choice. India is not poor by default, but by design. India has embraced poverty as a state policy. India's socialism, he said, and Tejasvi Surya quoted it, India's socialism is not where you take money from the rich and distribute it to the poor. It's the kind of system where you take money from the honest rich and give it to the dishonest poor. So once again, it's a BJP MP saying this. So you can see the BJP is now set on that course. How far it goes, we will see, and when there are flaws or when they falter, we will talk about this. But that course is set. Look on the other hand at what the Congress did. Rahul Gandhi in his speech, he talked mostly about farm bills, farm laws now, but the message in his lines was very clear. Because what are these three farm bills, he said? What is the intent? Intent of one, he said, was to drive out the small seller, the farmer, and the small buyer, that is in the mandi, from the market. So private sector will now come and overwhelm the mandis, and mandis will cease to exist. Number two, he said that now private sector is building these big godowns. One industrialist in the private sector has the ability now to store 40% of India's grain, vegetables and fruits. The farmer is now fully at the mercy of these big guys. One guy will buy everything, the other guy will store everything, and the farmer will be left at their mercy. And third, he says, the intent for the third law, that when farmer feels aggrieved at anything that is done by these big guys, the farmer now no longer has the power to go to the courts. So that's what he says. Interesting. And then he doesn't name Ambani and Adani, but he leaves nothing to chance while he keeps on saying hum do hamare do. He neither says Modi and Amit Shah nor Ambani and Adani, but he leaves nothing to chance. In fact, at one point, if you watch that video, I'll share that video with you. At one point, he says that, do you remember that old family planning ad with four faces, cute, cute, sundar, sundar, mote, mote. So I leave the rest to your imagination. Then you have P. Chidambaram, who has been a reformist finance minister, commerce minister before that, who said that this is a budget of the rich, for the rich, by the rich. That this is a budget for the 1% Indians who own 73% of India's wealth. And then Shashi Tharoor, who, if I may say so, is probably the most liberal in the Congress party on the economy. He also goes on to say this is a budget of na jawan, na kisan. So you can see that the Congress is also set on that course. And I think the champion from the Congress party in the debate was young Dipinder Hooda, who quoted an article by Harish Damodaran in the Indian Express. And by the way, I think he is the finest correspondent on agriculture in India by far. He said that Harish Damodaran said that it will cost just a few more lakhs of crores if Government of India were to guarantee MSP to every farmer in the country. And he said, why can't you afford it? This year, you've seen in the pandemic year, the wealth of the super rich in India has grown by 13 lakh crores. So just tax them a little bit and this money will become available to you. So that is how this debate has gone this time. Now, not all change is necessarily good, but this one is, for the simple reason that you're coming out of trench warfare and now fighting politics of maneuver and mobility. That's a good thing because the BJP has positioned itself, so has the Congress and the opposition. One on the right, economic right, one on the left. This also resolves a dilemma in some ways for people like us who were caught because we didn't know whether we were left or right or liberal or conservative, because conservative in India or right in India means also being illiberal on social issues and on communal issues, whereas to be liberal on these issues means being left on the economy. So some bit of clarity is coming in that area. Now the battle lines are drawn and the Modi government is up for a big test now that they have signaled this big shift in India's political economy. The protests on farm laws is the first big popular challenge to them. But more is yet to come. There are the labor reform laws. There is also the promise of privatizing 2 PSU banks, 1 general insurance company, and also of listing LIC, besides privatizing many other companies. The fact is, these are companies, PSU banks, insurance company, LIC, that have big labor unions and big labor union power. And you can see that opposition now will go and play the game with them, and that will set up multiple challenges for the Modi government going up to 2024. And also, as this year goes on, we'll also see whether they can keep the promises they made on reform or not. Now, that is politics. So this is how politics is always played. Nobody wins power by being nice to the other guy or by being fair to the other guy. What's new today is that for the first time in our politics, there is a clear left-right divide on the economy. And that is a welcome development, I think so. Where I stand on political economy is well known, but it doesn't matter. What matters now is that henceforth in all elections, people will go to vote with a clear choice between unabashed backers of the private sector and re-energized socialists.